That clip you just played of Keir Starmer and Donald Trump didn't fill me with a ton of confidence. They didn't seem all that invested in AUKUS, but we'll see what happens there. But look, I think you're right. The issue here is it appears to be the case that Anthony Albanese is not really taken seriously on the international stage and is not really respected. And that would be a concern for the government here. There are some within Labor who have a relatively cavalier attitude towards the United States, and some of whom are actively hostile towards the Trump administration. And whether you like Trump or not is beside the point. The US is obviously our most important ally. And so I think there's probably a sense from the United States that perhaps the current government here in Australia is not as committed and as serious as it should be about that defence relationship. So I think that explains why Trump has basically stood up Anthony Albanese on this occasion.
Look, it needs to be secure, Caroline, doesn't it? I mean, this is such a fundamental part of our future in terms of defending ourselves and in terms of our best friend in America. As Dan says, America is our best friend, Donald Trump or otherwise. We need America. And the fact that this meeting hasn't taken place, I don't think you can blame Albo for that. It was beyond his control. But we're sort of looking at September or perhaps later in the year before Albo will actually catch up with Donald Trump and have a chat. I mean, it does seem ridiculous given you've got AUKUS on the table at the moment and it's under a review in the US, and you've got tariffs. You've got these really nation-changing sort of issues at stake at the moment. There does need to be a meeting.
Yeah, Dan, Pat mentions tariffs. That was going to be another big part of this conversation, this face-to-face conversation between the pair. What happens now with that? I mean, everyone's talking about AUKUS, but what happens with tariffs?
Well, I think the thing with tariffs is, we should have a talk with them and see if we can have a different arrangement. But we should focus on our own backyard first. I mean, the negative economic implications of the policies that we are imposing upon ourselves are far worse than anything the United States is doing. I mean, all you have to do is look at our energy policy and policies like net zero, which are causing massive increases to energy prices and smashing our industrial sector, or the regulation and red tape that's coming out of Canberra and state governments. So I think, this government has said it wants to have a productivity agenda. Well, the first thing you do is look at your own economic policy settings. And as I say, if you can negotiate a better deal, go for it. But let's focus on the things that we can control.
Easy missing out on his meeting with Donald Trump. Donald Trump's priorities here are understandable, but it just shows how, I suppose, irrelevant Anthony Albanese has made himself.
I think this has been an abject failure of Australian diplomacy, Chris. I mean, yes, it's understandable President Trump has had to leave this meeting early and go back. He had a number of meetings, bilateral meetings with world leaders before he'd done so. But unlike every other world leader, or nearly every other world leader, who's made their way to Washington over the past 6 months, whether it's the German Chancellor, the French President, the UK Prime Minister, the Japanese Prime Minister, the Jordanian King, any number of people, Anthony Albanese has not gone. He'd put betting everything on this meeting to try and get us out of punitive tariffs, to try and secure the AUKUS agreement, and now it hasn't happened and we're left flat-footed. This is terrible.
Yeah, the point I made at the top of the program, though, is if you just looked at the issue of the moment, the Middle East crisis, and sure, the American-Australian relationship is going to thrive long-term. We've got deep people-to-people economic and defence links, of course. But if Trump's looking at this issue where he needs friends, where he and Israel need friends and support, he'll be very well aware that Anthony Albanese and this government have signed up to sanctions against Israeli ministers, that we've refused to repudiate the ICC ruling against Benjamin Netanyahu and his defence minister, and we haven't even come out now strongly in support of Israel taking out Iran's nuclear facilities. But so in international diplomacy at the moment, Australia is of zero value to him.
Look, we've made ourselves irrelevant, Chris, under Penny Wong and Anthony Albanese. When it comes to the Middle East, we've made ourselves irrelevant. I mean, the first person that Penny Wong spoke to after this Israel-Iran conflict broke was the Iranian foreign minister, not the Israeli Prime Minister, not other allies as far as I'm aware, the Iranian foreign minister. I mean, what sort of a situation are we in? This is part of the Labor Party's obsession with process over outcome, if you like. The outcome here, an Iran that has its nuclear ambitions severely curtailed, that can no longer pose an existential threat, not only to Israel, but to other countries in the region, that is no longer providing support to armed terrorist groups in the region, that is an outcome that we should be supporting here in Australia.